Every seasoned breeder makes that million-dollar mental calculation while looking out over their laying house with pride. You've got your F1 pullets, such as the classic cross of a Rhode Island red rooster over a leghorn hen, or the popular Isa Brown and Black Star commercial hybrids, performing at peak levels, filling the egg cartons every single morning with enviable ease. Then, the million-dollar idea hits you. You figure if you cross these champions, you'll engineer the ultimate laying line without paying a dime to the commercial hatcheries. The plan looks foolproof. You mark the days on the calendar, nail the incubation, and burn through daily feed sacks for 6 long months just to raise those F2 prospects. Brooders are packed, feed hoppers are empty, and your hopes are soaring. Finally, the long-awaited point of lay day arrives. You grab your record book, pull out your calculator, and a cold sweat runs down your spine. You discover with sheer horror that the profitability math simply doesn't add up anywhere. That grand dream of self-reliance transforms overnight into a capital-crushing machine. But don't worry, because a master technique exists, a secret guarded closely by veteran breeders, that will let you reverse this disaster and build your own line of champions without depending on the industry ever again. Today I'll reveal what that method is and how to apply it step by step right in your own pens. Let's begin. The biological machinery behind hybrid vigor runs on ironclad rules that never forgive shortcuts. When you buy a first-generation pullet, you're acquiring an animal where the genes line up in flawless uniformity. Every single system inside her body is engineered for one high-efficiency function, driven by years of strict selection. But when you cross 2 hybrid birds together, you completely destroy that cellular stability. The alleles segregate and clash against each other following Mendel's strict laws in a chaotic fashion. The purity of the bloodline fractures into unrecoverable pieces. You lose the core engine of modern poultry production in a single step. The true disaster reveals itself brutally when we analyze the feed conversion ratio in this second generation of free-mating crosses. The F2 inherits the worst of both production worlds without capturing the benefits. You'll notice an insatiable ravenous appetite immediately, worthy of a heavy meat ancestor, combined with a narrow, immature, and deficient reproductive tract. You're dealing with a massive chassis, designed by nature to pack on fat and muscle tissue rapidly, which demands abundant daily feed rations. However, the internal laying system operates at half throttle, entirely incapable of turning that expensive protein into the harvest you need to collect every single morning. The results at the feeders terrify any experienced farmer who keeps strict weekly tabs on operational expenses. Your F2 birds will consume nearly double the daily feed compared to their first-generation mothers, yet they'll barely manage half the egg output. Every sack of feed you dump into the cylindrical hoppers represents a direct, painful cash leak, vanishing solely into maintaining the body temperature of inefficient animals. The pen gets flooded with grain-guzzling bottomless pits, offering zero return in production to cover the feed bill at the end of the month. That deep metabolic imbalance won't get fixed by costly vitamin supplements, drinking water probiotics, or tweaking the artificial lighting hours inside the shed. Altered genetics impose an unbreakable physical barrier that blocks all efficiency. The intestinal tract of the F2 hen processes calcium and crude protein with alarming clumsiness, dumping vital nutrients straight into the manure. You're raising birds that demand delicate, expensive management, yet they're equipped with the crude biology of a backyard ornamental fowl. The farm's cash flow suffers a silent hemorrhage that few survive without completely emptying the facilities. The survival instinct pushes producers to cut corners to beat market prices, but biology ignores human urgency. When you skimp on buying certified replacement stock, you take an incalculable gamble that slaughters your profit margin. Top-tier birds guarantee precise conversion, where every single gram of protein shows up in the egg tray. Trusting sloppy backyard crosses shatters that natural efficiency contract, inviting ruin right under your roof before the first month ends. The nightmare pushes relentlessly toward the sexual maturity phase of these hybrids, shattering any production schedule you planned on keeping. A standard commercial pullet kicks off her cycle at 18 weeks of age, ready to pay back the money invested in rearing her. With the unpredictable F2 generation, the growth clock freezes. Ovarian development suffers a drastic, irregular delay, pushing the first ovulation out to 24 or even 26 weeks. You've got hundreds of beaks eating up floor space, devouring high-value developer rations for 2 extra months, without dropping a single egg in the nest box to pay off that relentless accumulated expense. When the birds finally decide to start laying, the results in the nest boxes look like a genetic lottery stripped of all commercial sense. Standardization, the very pillar that attracts premium buyers, vanishes from the radar. In a single day, you gather everything from tiny, worthless pullet eggs to monstrous, deformed double yolkers that turn out completely unviable and end up causing severe vent prolapses in the hens. That irregular sizing makes standard packing cartons useless without the lid crushing the product. Your regular customers, used to flawless uniformity in the tray, reject that chaotic presentation instantly. Your spotless reputation as a local supplier hits the dirt. The visual impact on the F2 eggshell serves as another unmistakable sign of internal flock collapse. That dark, even, glossy, attractive brown color from the original generation vanishes entirely. The shell gland fails miserably at depositing pigment overnight, churning out eggs with chalky patches, sandpaper-like porous textures, and an extreme discoloration that scares buyers off. The external appearance screams deep nutritional weakness. A pale shell carrying hairline cracks shouts pure inefficiency, instantly killing any chance of negotiating a top-dollar sale. You lose your authority at the counter because your product lacks that essential visual punch. Even worse is the structural weakness of those poorly formed shells. The erratic absorption of calcium in the gizzard and intestine triggers microfractures, invisible to the naked eye in the nest, but fatal during daily collection. A slight bump between eggs inside the transport baskets is all it takes for the shell to crack, spilling sticky yolk all over the clean batch. This extreme fragility multiplies collection waste during transport over dirt roads. You end up discarding an alarming amount of eggs every morning, watching months of hard work slip away right through the gaps in the plastic flats. Walking slowly down the production shed aisle, the visual impact of that uncontrolled biology is undeniable to anyone. Flock uniformity shatters into 1,000 unrecognizable pieces. The F2 generation becomes morphologically unstable, throwing unpredictable phenotypes into every corner of the pen. You spot hens stuck at a stunted weight of 3 pounds, utterly incapable of generating proper body heat. They're hyperactive, high-strung, fine-boned birds that barely manage intermittent laying cycles and crash into endless molts at the slightest shift in outdoor wind speed. A few yards away from those tiny birds, the anatomical contrast is genuinely terrifying. You run into colossal roosters tipping the scales well past 9 pounds of live weight, trudging around with the excessive bulk of a terminal cross-broiler. These massive males consume disproportionate shares of daily feed, hogging the hopper feeders and shoving smaller hens aside with their unbearable bulk. Yet their field fertility turns out nearly non-existent. Their massive breast volume makes them clumsy, entirely incapable of maintaining balance to mount with proper agility, leaving them as mere feed trough worshippers who offer zero reproductive value to the main breeding stock. The mathematical formulas designed for nipple drinkers and linear perching space fall apart when applied to a flock where certain animals take up double the floor area of their pen mates. The internal microclimate of the shed loses its thermal balance, air circulation crashes against uneven body masses, and deep litter moisture spirals out of control. A flawless facility design loses every ounce of primary function purely because of the unstable skeletal structure driving these aimless backyard crosses. The final blow lands at the end of the productive cycle, when you try to claw back some of your invested capital by selling off heavy cull hens. In a normal, well-structured flock, the spent hen has a locked-in market and a steady salvage value thanks to her carcass consistency. With the chaotic F2 generation, the local slaughterhouse or your regular buyer rejects your offer without a second thought. Nobody wants to process an irregular batch where some breasts look like game birds while others carry the thickness of a turkey, demanding wildly different cooking times. That direct sabotage to your salvage value wipes out the single emergency income stream that saves the year's financial balance. Total degradation of the flock doesn't stop at deformed bones or devalued fragile eggs. A much denser latent risk poisons the pen's atmosphere from the very first crow, complicating every routine chore. The docile, easy-to-manage temperament, that trait so carefully guarded and shielded by the creators of pure foundation lines, vanishes without leaving a trace in the progeny. The random shuffle of F2 chromosomes acts as a biological trigger that suddenly wakes up the wild defense instincts of their ancestors, spiking heart rates and alert levels straight into the range of wild game birds. The peaceful social hierarchy collapses into absolute chaos. The males develop ferocious aggression, attacking handlers for no reason and blocking smaller hens from accessing water. When this extreme nervousness mixes with poor nutrient absorption, stress erupts into uncontrollable feather pecking. A shallow scratch on the back escalates within hours into raw cannibalism, drawing hungry beaks straight toward the bright color of fresh blood. The producer bitterly discovers that their quiet rearing shed has transformed beyond recovery into a savage, desolate battlefield. And while you're watching your shed turn into that chaotic environment, the massive international poultry corporations, those biogenetic titans dominating the global market, sleep incredibly well every single night. Massive research entities dedicate immense budgets to design highly complex four-way crosses, structuring strict grandparent lines that produce parent lines, which ultimately hand you that coveted first-generation bird. This entire cellular network serves one definitive, calculated purpose: to build a biological dead end. They engineer these birds to perform at the absolute limit of their anatomical capacity for a single laying cycle, but they program their internal code to crumble apart if a farmer tries to breed them. Taking the bait and mating hatchmates from that same commercial line means playing the exact game the industry designed to keep your farm dependent on their catalog season after season. The frustration you feel when looking at an uneven flock comes from a genetic lock functioning to perfection. If you truly want to break that constant supply chain and stop buying expensive replacement stock every year, you've got to abandon blind multiplication right now. A genuine field producer understands that true independence gets built under the unbreakable rules of conservation genetics, locking in traits with absolute patience. Trying to clone the success of a multinational company by mating two unstable hybrids represents an act of desperation that empties your feed silos. To take control of your own breeding pens, you need to take a mental step back, forget the promise of the miracle cross, and start working with the laws of deep inheritance. You've got to sculpt hardiness and yield right from the bedrock of pure blood. The foundation of a self-sustaining homestead demands that you act as a creator rather than a consumer, molding a flock that thrives on your specific soil. And that's where the promise I made you at the beginning comes into play, the great secret to stop depending on commercial catalogs. Here's the exact roadmap the old master breeders followed to perfection. Instead of crossing two unstable hybrids, the correct move after securing an exceptional bird from two foundation breeds involves applying the powerful technique of backcrossing. You take the best hens from that first generation, the rugged survivors demonstrating superior vigor in the runs, and you backcross them to the original foundation sire. If your main goal focuses on locking in massive egg production, an active temperament, and feed efficiency, you mate those hybrid hens back to a pure foundation rooster from the Leghorn line. If your environment demands relentless hardiness, sustained body weight, and cold resistance to survive harsh winters, the backcross shifts toward a heavy foundation male like a Rhode Island Red or light Sussex. This directional move relies on cellular math applied directly to the profitability of the coop. By making this initial backward leap, you instantly elevate the concentration of your desired genes to 75% in the new offspring. You filter out the noise, diluting the unwanted characteristics of the other ancestor and firmly anchoring the anatomical traits that actually pay the feed bill. You regain total control of the steering wheel, guiding the flock toward a predictable uniformity where chicks hatch sharing the exact same plumage pattern, the same bone growth speed, and the same biological clock to kickstart their production cycle. You eliminate the massive size disparities that wrecked your floor space calculations. This marks the beginning of genuine power on the farm, transforming chaotic variability into a stable production line responding precisely to the demands of your local climate. Every hatch brings you a step closer to a customized flock, locking in the feed conversion ratio you need to stay in the green. Progress toward that stability requires absolute coldness when walking down the aisles of your breeding shed. A breeder aiming to consolidate a custom strain can show zero mercy in selection and zero emotional attachment to a defective bird. You need to take a surgical approach to clean out the breeding stock, relying on mandatory biological indicators that reveal the raw truth about every bird's metabolism. The evaluation starts with direct handling, measuring the pelvic span of the hens during peak production. You pick up the bird, hold her tight, and place your hand over her rear abdominal region. The pelvic span must allow a 3 to 4 finger spread. This physical measurement confirms a wide, elastic reproductive channel perfectly engineered to push out jumbo eggs without suffering prolapses or tissue tears. The second visual indicator works without fail and exposes the genuine level of metabolic commitment the hen offers to your production line. You have to examine the progressive depigmentation of the shanks, the beak, and the eye ring. An elite layer pouring her genetic potential into the nest boxes aggressively transfers the yellow pigments from her feed, the xanthophyll packed in the corn rations, straight into the egg yolk. Her body bleaches out as she draws pigment into her eggs, leaving her shanks pale and worn. If you spot a hen in the pen several months into the season still sporting intense, bright yellow legs, you're looking at a biological imposter. That bird hijacks expensive nutrients from the developer ration to maintain her own physical appearance instead of converting them into the product you need to sell. She is a biological freeloader, a silent thief that must be culled from the breeding pen immediately. Physical analysis goes even deeper when you observe the molting pattern and the persistence of old plumage. Nature dictates that a superior bird sacrifices her outward appearance for productive output. You want to keep those ragged-looking hens sporting broken, dirty, and dried-out feathers at the end of a long cycle, because that external deterioration proves their endocrine systems prioritize the daily formation of eggshells over the aesthetic renewal of their plumage. They pull minerals from their own reserves to build strong shells for you, Fast-replacing birds, the ones that stop production early to molt slowly and show off pristine plumage mid-season, represent an unacceptable drain on profitability. Their internal clock chooses rest over perseverance, a genetic weakness you can never allow to contaminate the incubator trays of the upcoming season. You want the hardest workers, not the showbirds. Any bird that disrupts flock harmony goes straight to the stew pot without hesitation, closing out its life cycle to provide value in the kitchen. This includes any male demonstrating a high-strung or aggressive temperament toward the handler, a severe hereditary defect that ruins the peaceful management of the entire flock. A foundation rooster acts as a bodyguard and a silent watchman, never a threat to the farmer. Twisted keels, asymmetrical beaks, poor leg conformation, or chronic production of microfractured eggs act as definitive death sentences. The rigor in this constant purging process stands as the only guarantee that your foundation genetics remain intact, strong, and ready to withstand the pressure of the next biological level in your breeding program. Once the backcross clears out the breeding stock and the culls leave only the elite breathing in the runs, your strategy advances toward homozygous fixation. This is the exact moment where standard management transforms into true biological engineering, tailored right to your own dirt. The central objective now focuses on ensuring that those dominant genes, the ones responsible for high lay rates, resistance to suffocating heat, or robust immunity against soil pathogens, anchor themselves permanently on both sides of your breeding stock's chromosomes. You want the alleles to become identical, guaranteeing that when a male and a female from your own line cross, the offspring emerge as an exact replica of their parents in conformation, yield, and environmental adaptability. You basically forge your own genetic lock and key, ensuring that the traits you worked so hard to isolate never slip away into random segregations again. To achieve this level of purification, without falling into the deadly trap of inbreeding depression, you've got to implement line breeding with absolute control over the pedigree tree. Open pen reproduction where random chance dictates the daily matings ends right here. Now you organize specific breeding pens, isolating the best hens alongside a proven male, and separating the bloodlines into distinct families. You keep strict records in your field notebook or tracking apps, identifying every egg, every chick that breaks the shell, and its direct ancestry. By crossing distant cousins or uncles with nieces sharing the same vigor, you concentrate the power of the foundation blood while keeping the necessary biological distance to avoid a catastrophic drop in cellular viability. This detailed process prevents the flock's immune system from collapsing due to extreme inbreeding. Left unchecked, this shrinks egg size, delays bone growth, and dramatically spikes embryonic mortality inside the incubators, ruining years of hard work through one single bad mating decision. In contrast, structured line breeding acts as a natural filter that consolidates strengths and rapidly exposes hidden recessive defects, allowing you to clean anomalies from the blood through precise culling before they spread across the farm. You forge a rugged living powerhouse, designed piece by piece in the aisles of your own shed to function as a self-sufficient and predictable production unit. By mastering the backcross and trait fixation, you stop acting as a perpetual buyer to become the biological creator of your own breeding line. You forge a rugged strain, hardened to the environmental reality of your land, capable of sustaining your production for decades without relying on external markets or corporate patents. Let me know down in the comments which of these pure breeds makes the most sense for your setup. If you got some value out of this breakdown, hit that subscribe button and give the video a thumbs up so we can keep bringing you practical poultry advice. To your success, fellow breeder. Until next time.